Hi. I thought Labor Day would be a good event to share with you 3 tests which I use to predict successful interview outcomes. And these tests you can use as you wish for your own journeys, right? The first test would be the StoryBank test. Okay, so long story short, I could predict your interview success by the number of stories you have and how many times you have revised those stories. Okay, for example, if you have 15 stories and you revise them at least 3 times, you are quite likely to do well in job interviews. Okay, this is in contrast with a candidate that has less than 5 stories prepared for the job interview. Why would a candidate with 5 stories or less not do so well in job interviews? Because chances are they will get asked questions for which they won't have a story prepared for to answer, right? And if you have not touched on that specific area that they're interested in, chances are your answers won't be the best. Also, candidates with fewer stories tend to be less qualified for the role that you may be applying for, right? So you would have 20 years of experience, but only 5 stories which would make sense for the type of role you're applying for, right? And the last example with respect to story banks is you may have 50 stories which you revised only once or never revised them. In my opinion, you're equally very unlikely to pass your job interviews simply because you might look at these things too superficially. Right, so the number of times you've been through these stories indicates how ready they are for prime time during job interviews. Okay, so long story short, around 15 stories revised 3 times is a great way to correlate positive interview outcomes. Okay, the second test I like to bring to your attention here would be the Hacker test. Okay, so basically, candidates who shortcut interviews through, let's say, insider information do not or are extremely unlikely to pass them. Okay, I'm not speaking about screening rounds here because, there you could have referrals and it depends on many other factors, but I'm speaking about final interviews, about proper interviews. How do I know this works? Well, I have candidates who know the questions in advance, who are so-called preferential candidates, and they will still do 15 coaching sessions on the behavioral side of their interview. They still go through my training programs in full, just in order, they are slightly paranoid about their prep, just in order to pass them, right? Where in fact, I hear this a lot more often from candidates than I have some insider info. They will only ask me 3 questions. I only will prepare these 3 questions, and I know some shortcuts there, that if you say this and do that, I'm going to pass their interviews, or it's going to be only formality for them, or you bite into some stuff such as coming up with answers rewarded using AI because it's faster, right? So usually whenever someone is looking for shortcuts, someone is hacking the process for job interviews, that's usually not a great sign, right? And maybe one more note here, because I know people who hack these interviews quite successfully, and there are extremely few of them. And the point of hacking these interviews is to negotiate a significantly better job offer. Okay, it's not even to get up leveled, if you ask me. So people whom I've seen who can do some tricks with these interviews, they do it in a bit to negotiate better job offers. When in fact, most of you will struggle to even consider paying money or investing significant resources in order to pass them, right? Whereas the good ones are at another level, so to speak. And the third test I'd like you to consider as a predictor on how well on positive interview outcomes would be the completion test. So basically, I found that I could read between the lines of candidates who were able to I could correlate success with candidates who completed what they have committed to complete. Okay, I'm not necessarily referring to my training programs here. I'm referring also to you coming up with a plan. Let's say your plan is to prepare, 15 stories revised 3 times the story bank test, and to do 3 coaching sessions, or do it in the mirror if you don't want to pay someone for coaching. But I found people who complete these things are far more likely, like at least 10 times more likely, in my opinion, to also have positive interview outcomes, right? So I'm not saying that you should have the best possible, the most possible stories or the most complicated plan, but if you have a plan, or if you go through a training program, hopefully mine, but if you have this plan, to go through it in full. This is also that I found significantly correlates with positive interview outcomes. So I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.